Tom Davis together with Dave Ginsburg, who spent 37 years covering sports in the area for the Associated Press, sports editor of the Associated Press. And Dave, it wasn't just Orioles coverage, it was a lot of things.
I had Orioles, I started covering the Redskins. I came to Baltimore in '90, then I covered the Orioles, didn't have a football team then, but I had Maryland, Navy, then the Ravens got here in '96, and I covered every one of those years up until I retired in February. 25 years of Ravens and anything else that happened, golf tournaments, you name it, whatever happened in Maryland, lacrosse championships, I was responsible for.
Now explain to the sports fans what a sports editor for the Associated Press, which is really national, the Associated Press. I mean, anything you write would be on what we used to call the wire.
Yeah, oh, it's still the wire.
Yeah, okay. Tell us exactly, in other words, like how important it is for what you did all those years to, to be accurate and to, so people will be reading you obviously a lot.
Well, the first thing is accuracy. Second thing is speed. And the third thing is to be non-partial. Look, did I want the Orioles to win? Yes, I did, because that's the team. I knew all the guys. Same thing, Ravens, but impartial. And I was covering this game or whatever the event was for the entire nation, in fact, the world. So it was what happened there and not necessarily how the Orioles lost, but let's say how the Yankees won. And I couldn't be partial to the home team. I was covering it as a neutral reporter. And again, accuracy, important to get the facts correct, and then you can sort of have fun writing it after we get the quotes. But first thing, last pitch, in the books, story on the wire, 400, 500 words, with whoever won the game as the lead. Not that the Orioles lost, that the Yanks won.
When did you first, in your own mind, say to yourself, I want to be a reporter or involved in sports?
Excellent question. As a kid.
Really?
As a kid, I didn't think I was going to be good enough to play. I always loved to write, Tom. I always loved sports. I played it in high school, but I started working in high school. I worked for the student newspaper, covering even some of the games that I participated in. And then that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to do it from almost day one. That was what I wanted to do, and I lived my dream.
Now, how did you get recognition, or how did you get into it? I can remember personally. I can remember working 6 months for free for Vince Bagley before I ever got a job. So how did you get to the point where you knew what you wanted to do, but you also had to sacrifice time to get it?
Excellent point. I covered high schools for many, many years. Prince George's County. I'd cover a night game on Friday. I'd drive down to the Washington Star back then. It was an evening newspaper. Write the story. I got $25 and I was happy as heck. Wrote for the Montgomery Sentinel, and all the while going to school and working at Giant Food to pay the bills. And finally, one day, the Gordon Beard, whom you know, from the Baltimore Bureau, asked me if I would want to cover a few Bullets games back when they were in Baltimore, and I was happy to. Didn't get much money, but that was my foot in the door with the Associated Press. I started writing for the Washington Bureau as well. And then I eventually stepped into the job as a full-timer.
Basically, you're your own boss, right? I mean, for anything you're covering?
Absolutely. There were times where there were conflicts. Maryland had a home game, Orioles playing at home, whatever. I had to choose the game, and then I would assign someone else to cover the game that I didn't cover. Certainly the boss, but I reported to people up in New York who had their opinions as well. I mean, if it was a really tough one, I'd clear it through them before I decided that I was going to cover which game that I ended up doing.
Now, speaking of opinion, basically, as a reporter, were you able to have opinions, or did you just stay away from that?
Opinions in that if the Ravens played awful, then I had to write it that way. I mean, there was no the Ravens should dump Joe Flacco type of thing. I would have to back that up with quotes. We did have pieces that were called analysis, in which there was some opinion, but it had to be backed up by fact. Someone saying that quote, if Harbaugh said that Lamar was having a terrible season or whatever, then I could I could back it up. I could say he's having a terrible season and then use the quote to back up what I had said.
I can remember this when I first broke in back in the late 60s, early 70s. Typewriters to computers. Tell us how it's changed in the coverage.
Totally. When I was first doing games, I would a Bullets game. I'd bring my old electric typewriter, plug it in, write the story, and then edit it with a pencil, and then dictate it over the phone. Then we got those Tandy Radio Shack things that you saw about 6 lines of type, but it was still great. And then you had a coupler, and that was rough. Now. But now with laptops and instant sending, no dictating, I was a better writer at the end of my career, not just because of my maturity, but because of having access to a laptop. I could block a paragraph and move it up. I could delete it. Back then, you literally had to cut it out with a piece of paper, with a scissor, tape it, and then give it to your editor that way. It was tough, but writing got better because I guess the computers got better.
Did you use carbon paper too?
I did. I did. I was because I needed a copy for myself in case the editor lost it.
Right.
One time he did, I had the backup. So there was that, and luckily I got in after they used to do it by Western Union. I was after that, but not long after that.
Now, you've covered obviously multi-sports. What was your favorite sport to cover?
Baseball.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Because 9 innings, Tom, it's a slower pace. You can get it all together over 2.5, 3 hours, and the game moves a little bit slower. NFL, that was the toughest. First of all, there are only 10 games a weekend or a day, and those meant a lot, and it was intense. But baseball, I mastered it, and not being immodest, but I mastered what to do, and even if a guy, Chris Hoyles, hits a grand slam in the bottom of the 9th, you start at the top, you already have your bottom written, you send it as soon as you can. And I love the summer. I love the open press box at Camden Yards. I liked everything about covering baseball.
So you're actually writing your game story as the game progresses. You're not waiting till it's over and start at the top.
Absolutely. And in fact, some of the notes are written before the game even starts. We find out about an injury that's tacked into the bottom part of the story under something called trainer's room, and then we write about who they're playing next. But yes, right off the bat. And my dream was a 6-run first inning, because that's what we say when you start at the top. You start at the top, and then you could go down. But, normally in a regular game, I'd write the bottom, how the scoring occurred up until the key moment in the game, and that would always be the lead.
Each game obviously is different, but were you looking for something similar, or did you have certain things you were trying to sort of like maybe jot down as a note or something as the game progressed? It would be almost like game to game, you'd try to do the same thing.
Another good question. I tried to make each game, tried to find the significance in that game. What made that game a little bit different than all the other 4-2 games I covered? And so I did try to find what made that game important. And most of that had to be summed up in the lead. So if a team had won, you always look for the winning streaks. If that gave them 6 wins in a row, that's going to be put up there. If a pitcher was making a comeback, whatever made that game important in and by itself, not just a 4-2 game in June that really had not much impact on the standings, but maybe had an impact on it, had an individual carry it.
To you, has the game changed the way, say, you would follow it for baseball in recent years with all these sabermetrics and all this spin rate and all these oddball numbers that they're coming out with now? Publicly?
It has to a degree, but I really couldn't incorporate that into a story because, as you see a lot of the stories, and I respect all the metrics, but most of those are provided by other websites, and the AP does not like to attribute facts that they got from whatever a website called Cybermetrics into the story. So it helped me understand the value of a player. But in terms of writing the story, it really was not incorporated much into the copy because I couldn't really cite where those numbers came from. In other words, the exit velocity, things like that. I sort of passed on that.
Now, you met a lot of players, I know, along the way. You had
Many.
lots of managers, coaches, and things like that. Let's just pick a sport, baseball. Who are some of the guys that you like most to talk to? Because obviously you talk to a lot of them.
I did. My favorite manager from the O's was Sam Perlazzo. He was one of us. There was one time when they were losing a lot of games in a row, and I just said, Sam, I'm going to give you a hug for luck. You need a hug in the dugout. They won the game, and we didn't make it a tradition, but I really did enjoy Sam, and who had a tough road to go. Cal Ripken, obviously. I mean, it was by the time I was done, we were on a first name basis. We knew each other, and it made me proud to be what I would consider to be a friend of Cal, and one that maybe no one would remember, but Luke Scott.
Oh yeah.
Did an interview with him down in Fort Lauderdale, and it went rather deep. He introduced me to his mom, his brother. And every subsequent, we got back to Baltimore. Dave, how you doing? Come on over, let's talk. And it was just chatting about life, his gun collection. I'm Jewish, he was not, and he wanted to know about my religion. Luke Scott was one of my favorite baseball players. Really a good guy. A little quirky,
Yeah.
but enjoyed our friendship.
How about football now? Obviously, you don't have to do that on a daily basis, or did you?
No, it
Yeah.
was basically
So the
Monday, Wednesday, Friday game. Not much. I will say, I always enjoyed talking to Terrell Suggs because you never knew what you were going to get from him. He could be angry. He was funny. He's in movies. He was really talented. I enjoyed talking to Ray Lewis because he was always, he was the best linebacker I ever saw, and he was insightful. I enjoyed talking to him. There wasn't a friendship there. And Joe Flacco, one of the nicest people in any sport that I ever covered.
I find something, Dave, that's kind of interesting now as times have changed. It used to be you could just approach a player and talk to him. Now the whole system has changed in sports in general, where you actually sometimes have to seek permission through the PR office.
Yeah.
How difficult is that for you when you work, to just try to coordinate all that stuff when you could technically, in years gone by, just walk up to a guy, have a chat with him, and get your job done?
Well, it depends on the organization. As we went deeper and covered the Orioles, they pretty much had that. As you might know, and Tom, they took all the coaches and moved them out of the way. We couldn't go walk by the manager's office anymore. If I wanted to talk to Showalter on a one-on-one basis, I'd have to go through the public relations department. It made it more difficult, not as much fun. There was not as much of a simpatico between the player and the reporter. There used to, that used to be something I really enjoyed. Football, the Ravens are pretty good about Wednesdays when you can talk to anyone, but if you really need an interview one-on-one, got to go through PR. That said, Ravens never turned me down ultimately, whether it was Harbaugh, Ozzie, or Joe Flacco. They always granted that permission.
The other thing, too, is when you get that opportunity to do one-on-one, doesn't it give you more of a sense of finding out more information than when you have a whole group around you, generally speaking?
Without question. And that's what made some of the Wednesdays at Ravens a little difficult, because there were never one-on-ones. And I used to tell some of the guys who wanted to do this is when we get them. We got 1 hour. Today, we got to get them. Yes, a one-on-one is always better. I got to prepare my questions. They were just mine, and I always got much more information out of that. And but those were tough to set up. That was the issue. But if you needed it, one-on-one it was, and always preferred.
How about the writers that if they'd see Dave doing an interview one-on-one, they'd charge over to make sure that he wasn't getting something
Yes.
that they weren't getting?
Well, that's what made it difficult. And then again, like when someone's talking to someone and I really need Marshall Yonda, someone's got him locked up. You got 5 minutes, you got 2 minutes, and then I'm charging in, man. But yeah, if I had a scoop, then I would pull the player aside. If there was something I really had to ask him that I didn't want anyone else to know, pulled him aside, and then and I would shoo off some people and just say, give me a minute.
in retirement, do you have any regrets that something didn't happen along the way that you would have liked to have seen happen for one of the sports teams?
Well, I never got to see the O's in the World Series. I did get to cover one World Series, and I went over to Nationals Park and saw them win that series a couple of years ago. That might be my only regret. And Tom, I don't know when we'll ever see the Orioles in the World Series. As you know, it's been '83, and we're still waiting for the next time. That's my regret.
And it's interesting. I mean, the Super Bowls aren't played in the local cities, too. I mean, when do you get a chance to go?
Oh, yes. I went to see Doug Williams beat Denver, and I saw both of the Ravens Super Bowl wins. I went down to Florida and to New Orleans for those two. They did let me go for those because I knew the team.
We appreciate Dave Ginsburg spending the last half hour with us talking a little inside sports coverage here in Maryland. For Dave, this is Tom Davis. Thank you for watching. Take Me Out to the Ball Game.